Welcome everybody. Gary Neville is back from the USA, and here is the newest edition of his podcast from the Etihad Stadium, where Manchester City have beaten Liverpool 3-0. They've beaten them, Gary, thoroughly.
Yes, emphatic. A really good day for Manchester City. And look, before the game, I don't think there was anybody that was walking into this stadium with any great knowledge of what the score was going to be. I think just seen Michael Richards after the game saying that he was intrigued before the game. I think I was something similar. I actually thought and said that I fancied Liverpool just to sort of nick it. I thought they'd have too much for City up front. I thought that Liverpool's centre-backs would handle Haaland. But it was a really bad day for Liverpool. We'll come on to that shortly. I think the first thing to start on today is Pep Guardiola's 1,000th game. I think I scored in Sir Alex Ferguson's 1,000th game at Manchester United.
You did, Champions League game, Lyon.
Yeah, I
Yes.
scored. That's an incredible achievement, eh? And you just think about greatness. I mean, Pep Guardiola is a great, great manager. 1,000 games. I think you said, did you say 716
Wins, yeah.
wins, which is 71%, win rate, which is just obscene. And this isn't his greatest team or his best team that he's had in those thousand games. You think about the team he had at Barcelona, which is probably the greatest team of all time, and then the treble-winning team here and the title-winning teams. But what his team have done today is give them a glimmer of hope going into a November international break. That they're 4 points off Arsenal. They've got experience. They've got a few players who've been around the block, and they've got a manager who knows how to win. And if I was Manchester City right now, and I'm sure Pep Guardiola knows how to win titles more than any of us, he'll be just thinking, let me hang on Mikel Arteta's shoulder come March. Let me be close enough to him to apply that pressure. He's the one you wouldn't want near you. And today, for me, the whole fixture was around who's going to emerge, who's going to come out of this match thinking that they can challenge Arsenal, who's going to be the team that think they can get close enough to them. And I thought it would be Liverpool. I think City have been inconsistent, but I was badly wrong. And Pep Guardiola's 1,000th game was a really good one for him and his team.
So, if you say, and most people agree, that this isn't his kind of premium team.
No, it's not.
How do you categorise them? There isn't a David Silva, there isn't Kevin De Bruyne, there isn't Aguero, there isn't a Yaya Toure, all of these great players he's had. How do you sum up what this team actually is?
I mean, it's a team I actually like watching. I mean, it's imperfect. His teams that you've seen, particularly here and at Barcelona, were like clockwork. I mean, it's very difficult to maintain what Pep Guardiola was achieving at this club and at Barcelona, because I didn't see as much of his football in Germany, so I'm not going to comment on Bayern Munich. But you're talking about some of the most beautiful football that you'll ever see, to the point of, like, you come into games knowing the outcome. Whereas when I watch City now, you're not quite sure of what's going to happen today, being a perfect example. But they are imperfect. They're a lot more physical. They've got Haaland up front, who is devastating. But again, he's not smooth in the way in which he plays, but he's an absolutely brilliant player. Nico Gonzalez in midfield. I mean, Bernardo Silva and Foden are still playing great football. But they're very different. They're very different in terms of, they're not as methodical in terms of their sort of combinations and passes and the way in which they link. They're not as good playing out from the back through their goalkeeper or their back four, but they're still a very good side. And it feels like a team that, Pep Guardiola's staying here to build another great side. And I don't quite think they're there, but what they do have is some players, you look through the spine of the team in Guardiola and Stones, Diaz, Rodri, Foden, Bernardo Silva and Haaland, and the goalkeeper, who know how to win. So if they can keep those players together and somehow, keep some momentum going and get close, they're going to be really, really dangerous towards the end, just through their experience. But it is an imperfect team. It's a team that you don't feel is as consistent and reliable as the one that they've had previously. And that's understandable. You'll never see me criticise Manchester City over this period, because through the period I was at United for 20 years, there were 2 or 3 seasons where you needed a transition to be able to build another side, and Sir Alex Ferguson did that. And when you keep a manager for so long, we were conditioned about 10, 15 years ago to say, you couldn't keep a manager anymore for a period of time and have success like it happened with Arsene Wenger, Sir Alex Ferguson, Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley. But you can. You can. Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, even Mikel Arteta. I mean, he's not had success yet, but he's been there for 5 or 6 seasons. So it does prove that if you have consistency in a great manager, you can deliver, continual success. And Look, this is going to be interesting in this next 6 months of what happens with City. I would say there's still quite a lot of work to do to convince me that they're going to win a title. I think Arsenal are the better team, but they're the one team that I wouldn't want and the one manager that I wouldn't want on my shoulder going in down the back straight.
Just a quick word, if you would, on Jeremy Doku, who you made your man of the match
Yeah.
today. I mean, he's a beautiful sort of glitzy player, isn't he? Do you,
Yeah.
do you think there's substance there? Oh, steady. You can't hear me. There's a lot of viewers who prefer that option. Would you say he has substance to go with that glitz?
He's
Doku?
one of he's one of those players that I would describe as being a nightmare to play against, but probably a nightmare to play with, because you don't know what he's going to do. He sometimes holds the ball when he should release it. He sometimes releases the ball when he should hold it. He's inconsistent with his final cross or his pass or his shot. But you can never, ever doubt his courage. And you think about the kid in the street that basically gets told to go and dribble and take players on. That's what I love about Doku. And today, I thought he was devastating in that game. In a game where Liverpool's tactic was to try and sit deep, be compact, be narrow, he's perfect, because he does have the ability to unlock a defence that's deep lying, who's got lots of players behind the ball, take not just one player on one-on-one, he can take two on and slip through the middle of them, and he did that a few times today. I thought it was absolutely brilliant to watch. And I didn't think Conor Bradley did badly against him. I didn't think Conor Bradley had a bad day. I thought he was one of Liverpool's better players. But I just thought Doku today was sensational. He was a difference maker. And, yeah, well done to him. And if he can add that consistency, and it's usually the case that wingers are the most inconsistent players on the pitch because they have the most difficult job to try and sort of do things that are different and win your team the game. So if he can add a bit more consistency and reliability to his decision-making in the final third and his execution of the pass or the cross, he's got a great chance of becoming a top winger in the world. He just has to improve his intelligence and understanding of the game and, like I say, be more predictable to his teammates and still be as unpredictable to the opposition. I do want to put a special mention for Mateus Nunes, the right-back. I thought and have thought he's a real weakness for City. Every time I see Nunes at right back, and because Nico O'Reilly, he's excellent, Nico O'Reilly, but because he's young at left back, you sometimes feel that City's back four is just going to be more vulnerable. But Nunes has done a really good job out there today. In fact, if you said to me, name a second player for City on the pitch, I think he'd probably be out there in terms of sort of where I would place him. I thought he was really, really good today, and I think we're quick sometimes in our positions to say that a player isn't at the level, and I'm sure City fans have looked at it and thought, well, is he good enough? Can he? Why is he playing right back? We signed him as a midfield player, but he's doing a good job out there. And certainly today, I thought he was excellent, and I think he deserves a mention.
Okay, so Liverpool, they beat Villa, they beat Real Madrid. There was a sense that all was well again. What's not well?
I think of all the games that they've had in the last month or 6 weeks when they've sort of been dropping points and losing matches, I would say that is a massive worry today for Liverpool fans watching that game. And I think Arne Slot will be looking at that game, particularly the first half, and think, that's nothing. That's a nothing of a performance. And I was trying to get my head around where it was, because just 5-6 minutes before half-time, it came to me that City had this game by the scruff of the neck. Go and get your second, because this lot have gone. Their legs had gone. It was almost as if they couldn't get up the pitch. They couldn't move. They were walking. And you never, ever accuse a Liverpool team in this last 5-10 years of throwing the towel in. And they didn't throw the towel in today by any stretch of the imagination, but physically and mentally they look beaten. Now, look, it has been a difficult week for them. They have had Villa. They have had Real Madrid. I get it. But today was such a big game. And to come out there and lack confidence, play so passively. They kept playing back the way. Konate kept playing back to his goalkeeper. Konate kept playing back to other players. I mean, Konate, after about 10-15 minutes, I was like, how many touches has Konate had? I went, obviously, pressed my button here. You will have heard me. And he'd had 24-25 touches. And I said this about a year ago. You cannot, it's not a tactic to let your centre-back have the ball the most in the team. Now, obviously, if it's Van Dijk, we know he can pass, but Haaland was shutting Van Dijk off. They were letting Konate have the ball. And it was almost as if they had no idea, Liverpool, about how to play through. Their tempo in the game was nothing. They looked physically really, really well short in the game. They looked physically short in terms of their running, physically short in terms of actually just getting out-muscled. I thought Wirtz in particular, I thought it was a really bad day for him. We've been tiptoeing around him, haven't we, for a few months. around the fact that he's young, he's coming to a new country, but he's 120 million quid. You're going to have to stand up soon. I mean, he's obviously got something. He's a really good player. He's technically fantastic. But he's been mauled out there today by Núñez and by others. He's been chucked around the pitch and didn't deliver in the quality side of things as well. So his performance was a real worry. But physically, I was worried. Physically, I'd be worried if I was Arne Slot looking at that team. There's a few of them look like they can't run. And I always think that when you go on a losing streak, you start to doubt everything. And that's wrong, because obviously there's some excellent players out there with great attitudes. So it's not a time to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But Arne Slot's going to need this next week just to sort of reflect, look at what he's got, look at sort of how he sort of sets up post-international break, and think about how he fixes the problems.
Yeah, but what Brentford have got, we're talking about long throws a lot this season, but Brentford have got the best player with a long throw in Coyote, and he's the right back. He goes over to the left to take them. So we asked Eddie Howe about this before the game, and I just want to look at the little tactic he set up. And Nick Pope, we know, is probably one of the biggest goalkeepers in the Premier League. So is the tactic from Eddie Howe and the goalkeeper was to have his goalkeeper not play as a goalkeeper, almost help his defenders to come and head it. So he's almost like an outfield player who can use his hands. Yeah. He's not on the goal line. He's not protecting the goal. So it was really interesting how he went about it. But Nick Pope had real problems with it all day. So this is the first one. This is from the left side. So we look at his position. We can see he's not in the goal and he misjudges it. He gets the flight of the ball wrong. But what he does do well is he realises that and then he drops back into the goal. So initially, he misreads the flight of the ball, but gets himself in a decent position and Newcastle handle it well. Again, we look at this situation now, and he's not even the goalkeeper as such now. There's actually a defender behind him who's actually on the goal line with one of the Brentford players. So again, you can see this tactic and what they've worked on, that they want Nick Pope, as well as the big defenders, to come for the first ball. This time, he does come for it, and he just doesn't deal with that at all. He's all over the place. So he's misjudged the first one, got away with it, and he's got away with this one again because he hasn't handled it well. So now we go to the goal. Now again, you look at the position that he finds himself in. He's right off the line, we can see that. And again, he makes a mess of this one. Now, as that ball's coming in now, if you go back to the first throw-in, and I said he misjudged it, but the great thing that he did was he realised that and then got back onto the goal line. I think he's got to realise now, especially with the forward backing into him, I'm not going to make that. You've got to get out of there. Get yourself out of there and get back onto that line. He just ends up in no man's land. He's miles out of his goal area. It was a tactic they wanted to use for the long throws. They were lucky on 2 occasions and then come a cropper there. And it was just really interesting at the end. I know there was maybe a little bit of an injury there. Ramsdale comes on for the penalty later on. Now, Ramsdale is a goalkeeper who's played for Arsenal. He's played for England. He's almost too good to be a second-choice goalkeeper. In some ways, that's a real battle. And I think at some stage, Ramsdale was always going to get the nod. I wouldn't be surprised if Ramsdale is in goal for the next Newcastle game. Yeah, I think Nick Pope's a really good goalkeeper, but at times he finds it tough in certain situations, especially with the ball at his feet. And I think it might be time now to give Ramsdale a run.
And they've got an international break to think about that decision. Dan Burn was at left-back. Both the sort of penalty incidents involved him, one given, one not given. Your thoughts?
I actually thought they were both penalties, and I think Newcastle got away with the first one, and I think Dan Burn thinks they're both penalties because you can just see by his reaction. I mean, there isn't a lot of contact. The VAR said minimal contact, but you see Dan Burn's reaction. Normally, if you feel an attacking player's dived, you're on top of him, you're screaming at him, but you see the contact there on the boot. But the problem with Dan Burn playing at left-back is, at times he can't move his feet because he's so tall, and they're the problems you would have as a centre-back going to left-back. So, can't move his feet quick enough, gets away with giving a penalty. The same 2 players are involved, and again, one of the problems having Dan Burn at left back would be his lack of pace. So they're the 2 problems: moving your feet quickly enough and the lack of pace, as we've mentioned. But he does a brilliant job for them at left back, and in some ways you'd want him at left back in this game because of set pieces. But Ouattara is a flying machine, and Brentford got what they deserved in terms of penalties.
I mean, that's exactly it, isn't it? I mean, given the physicality of Brentford, given their set pieces, you are going to want someone of the size of Dan Burn in your team.
You are in a specific game like that. I think what's interesting with Dan Burn is he's now in the England squad as well. Thomas Tuchel, feels really highly about him, but he's been brilliant for Eddie Howe, especially at centre-back. Eddie Howe's just got the problem now of Botman's come back. He was a really good player, and he's a left-footed centre-back. You never see two left-footed centre-backs play together. So you're almost getting Dan Burn in the team a little bit, while Lewis Hall's come on back. But again, that might be an area that Eddie Howe has to look at after the international break.
They were ahead at half-time. They've ended up losing away again. They've had a good start in the Champions League, had a good win at home during the week in the Champions League. We're 4 years now into Eddie Howe's reign. Where are the club rather than where is he? Or maybe where is he as well?
Well, listen, he's going to go down whenever he moves on for the club as one of the greatest Newcastle managers. I mean, you look at what he did when they were bottom of the table. He came in that first season, stabilises things. Then his second season to get Champions League football was out of this world. League Cup final against United. The next season, another really good season. Finished 7th. The goals they've scored there. Exciting team on the front foot. And then what we saw last season, winning the League Cup. And listen, I was devastated that day.
You were.
But the scenes that day and what the Newcastle fans and what he gave them that day, and Champions League football again. And you've mentioned what they're doing in the Champions League this season. I've championed Eddie Howe as the next England manager. I think he's a wonderful coach, the best English coach by a million miles. I love him to bits. But now that we're 4 years in, I don't think Eddie Howe can do any more than what he's done at Newcastle. He's won a trophy. He's got Champions League football. I don't see Newcastle winning a Premier League. So I'm not sure there's much more he can do. And that's not just talking on the back of Newcastle being, a couple of points outside the relegation zone or sort of questioning the manager in any way. But I think Newcastle have let him down. I do. I mean, the topsy-turvy sort of nature of the club in terms of sporting directors, other people behind the scenes. It almost feels at times like he's there on his own. The coaching, transfers, as I said, he's had problems with sporting directors, people at the top of the club. The big Saudi investment, it hasn't really kicked on. Now, they could question the PSR, the rules, I get all that. But something to me, when I look at how he had to handle the summer, the Isak situation, getting players in late, the Wissa situation now, it's been a mess at Newcastle, really. And I think when you're talking about one of the greatest managers they've ever had in their history, I think he deserves better. And if I'm thinking how Eddie Howe's thinking, if that England job came up in the summer after the World Cup, we know Tuchel's contract situation, I'd be there in a shot. Because, as I said, I think he's been let down, and I don't think he can take Newcastle any further in what he's done so far.
If things were to start to change off the field, and they do now have a new chief executive who came in September, and Ross Wilson from Nottingham Forest to be this sporting director, how the investment works going forward will depend on what Premier League rules are, sustainability, Champions League rules, etc. If some of the structural things were to change, could he do more then? Or are you saying that that's just not part? So I look at Mikel Arteta, but Arsenal have had that structure behind for...
It's not just structure. Arsenal are a bigger club than Newcastle. Newcastle, what Eddie Howe's done and getting Champions League football is absolutely fantastic. And they're a huge football club. But the history isn't there in terms of winning things or maybe bringing money in from the outside like, Liverpool or Manchester United and Arsenal do. Notoriously, they're probably the three biggest clubs in this country. So they've got that history behind them where they can bring money in from sponsorship or fans around the world. Newcastle don't have that. So it's always going to be difficult for them. They lose the best player in the summer.
Yeah.
So if I'm Eddie Howe, he's built this team, he's brought a lot of these players in and made them great players, and then they're getting sold. Who could be the next one that gets sold maybe in the future?
Is that because some of those players will go, well, if Isak's gone, then, what message does that send us out to a squad? Maybe I should start looking out.
But what else can they do? The only next step for Newcastle would be to win the league. That's it. They've got Champions League football. They've won a trophy. The next thing would be to challenge for a league title. They thought that might happen in a few years ago when the ownership comes in. But I just look at Eddie Howe now. They're 4 years in, looking at the end of the game, and thinking, even if they turn it around the second half of the season, I mean, they're great second half of the season, and they finish 7th, it'll still feel, but we've got Champions League. We won a trophy. For me, so. Yeah, I think he's been let down. And I think if I was Eddie Howe, I'd probably be looking sort of, you know, if the England job came, I would be looking at a situation like that, yeah.